Okay, next, so other comprehensive income or OCI. So other comprehensive income comprises items of income and expenses including reclassification adjustments that are not recognized in profit or loss as required or permitted by Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. So dito yung i-memorize nyo is yung 7 components of other comprehensive income. Okay? So first is unrealized gain or loss on equity investment measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Second, unrealized gain or loss on debt investment measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Third, gain or loss from translation of the financial statements of a foreign operation. 4, revaluation surplus during the year. 5, unrealized gain or loss from derivative contracts designated as cash flow hedge. 6, remeasurements of defined benefit plan, including actuarial gain or loss. And yung 7, change in fair value attributable to credit risk of a financial liability designated at fair value through profit or loss. So, yan yung mga kailangan nyo tandaan na kasama sa other comprehensive income or OCI. So, halos lahat ay hindi nyo pa yan na-encounter. So, kaya memorize nyo na lang muna. Okay? So, yan yung 7 components ng OCI. So, in-underlinean ko ng red ink or red pentel pen yung kailangan yung tandaan. So, yung una, unrealized gain or loss on equity investment. So, measure that fair value through OCI. Yung second ay unrealized gain or loss on debt investment at fair value through OCI. Yung pangatlo, gain or loss from translation of the financial statements of a foreign operation. So, yan yung may makita kayong foreign currency. Number 4, revaluation surplus during the year. Number 5, unrealized gain or loss from derivative contracts, okay, designated as cash flow hedge. Number 6, remeasurements of defined benefit plan, including actuarial gain or loss. And yung last, change in fair value attributable to credit risk of a financial liability designated at fair value through profit or loss. Okay. So, yung next dyan is yung presentation ng OCI. So, PAS 1, paragraph 82A provides that the statement of comprehensive income shall present line items for amounts of other comprehensive income during the period classified by nature. So, the line items for amounts of OCI shall be grouped as follows. So, dalawa dyan, OCI that will be reclassified subsequently to profit or loss when specific conditions are met. And second, OCI that will not be reclassified subsequent to profit or loss but to retained earnings. So, nilagay ko na lang dyan, profit or loss and retained earnings. So, OCI that will be reclassified subsequently to profit or loss when specific conditions are met, and OCI that will not be reclassified subsequently to profit or loss but to retained earnings. So, yung 7 components na yan, so ito, pag pinresent natin yan, either profit or loss or as retained earnings. Okay? So, ito yung kailangan nyo i-memorize yung 7 na yan, di ba? So, ano dyan yung i-reclassify natin as profit or loss. So, pag tinignan nyo dun sa reference book natin, yung kay Valix na Conceptual Framework and Accounting Standards 2020 edition. So, yung OCI na ika-classify natin to profit or loss ay 3. Tapos, yung OCI that will be reclassified to retained earnings ay 4. So, since ito, memorize mo na yung 7, so ang tandaan mo na lang yung 3 na i-reclassify natin as profit or loss. So, ibig sabihin yung 4 na maiiwan, so sa ano siya? Sa retained earnings. Okay? So, yung OCI that will be reclassified to profit or loss are unrealized gain or loss on debt investment measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Then, gain or loss from translating financial statements of a foreign operation. And yung pangatlo, unrealized gain or loss on derivative contracts designated as cash flow hedge. So, ibig sabihin yung tatlo na yon, ito, lagay ko na lang dito. So, ibig sabihin ito, P&L siya. Pag sinabing P&L, profit or loss. Tapos, gain or loss from translation of the financial statements of a foreign operation, yung foreign currency. So, P&L siya. And yung pangatlo ay, ito, unrealized gain or loss from derivative contracts. So, ito ay P&L din. So, the rest, yung apat na natitira, ibig sabihin sila ay retained earnings. So, classified or reclassified to retained earnings. So, ito yung unrealized gain or loss on equity investment, then revaluation surplus, okay, then remeasurements of defined benefit plan, and yung last, change in fair value attributable to credit risk of a financial liability. Okay? So, dun sa reclassification to retained earnings, yung una dyan, yung unrealized gain, sabi dyan, the application guidance of PFRS 9, paragraph B5, point 7.1, provides that such unrealized gain or loss is reclassified to retained earnings upon disposal of the investment. So, upon disposal of the investment. Yun yung tandaan ninyo. So, i-reclassify siya once na na-dispose yung investment. So, revaluation surplus during the year. So, the realization of the revaluation surplus is through retained earnings. While yung remeasurements of defined benefit plan, including actuarial gain or loss, the remeasurements are not classified subsequently but are permanently excluded. Okay? So, tanda, permanently excluded from profit or loss. However, the remeasurements may be transferred within equity or retained earnings. So, change in fair value attributable to credit risk of a financial liability. So, sabi dyan, such gain or loss from change in fair value attributable to credit risk of financial liability may be transferred within equity or retained earnings. Okay? So, basta tandaan ninyo, ang presentation ng OCI ay reclassify to profit or loss, yung tatlo. Unrealized gain or loss on debt investment at fair value through OCI. Gain or loss from translation of the financial statements of a foreign operation. And number 5, unrealized gain or loss from derivative contracts designated as cash flow hedge. So, yung tatlo na yun. So, yung remaining na apat, siya ay reclassify kay retained earnings. So, pag tinignan nyo dun sa libro natin, tingnan niyo yung nandun sa example, nasa page 194. So, tingnan nyo dyan yung statement of comprehensive income. Merong net income, 1,550,000. Tapos nakalagay dyan, other comprehensive income to be reclassified to profit or loss, P&L. So, tingnan nyo yung dalawang nandyan. Foreign currency translation gain. Yun yung letter, yung number 3. Okay. So, gain or loss from translation of the financial statements of a foreign operation. So, foreign currency translation gain. Yung pangalawa, unrealized loss on derivative contract designated as cash flow hedge. Yun naman yung number 5. Okay, so nakalagay siya as OCI to be reclassified to profit or loss. Okay, so yan yung sa presentation. So, teka, yung retained earnings, ayan. So, pwedeng na-discuss nyo na yan sa corporation or madi-discuss nyo pa lang sa corporation. So, ano ba yung retained earnings? So, ganito lang yan, class. Kung nung basic accounting ninyo, kung naalala ninyo, pag mayroong profit or loss, di ba, pumapasok siya sa capital ng owner. Okay, di ba? Kung naalala niyo yung sa closing entries ng basic accounting ninyo, di ba yung unang closing ninyo, ito yung closing entries ninyo. So, di ba ang unang ikino-close ninyo ay yung revenue, okay, sa income summary. So, pag since kino-close yung revenue sa income summary, yung revenue dapat ma-zero. So, di ba ang normal balance ng revenue ay credit? So, kaya para ma-zero siya, i-debit mo siya, di ba? Ang entry mo, debit, revenue, and credit, income summary. So, yung income summary, temporary account siya. So, ibig sabihin, masisiro din siya. Okay? So, once na na-close mo na yung revenue, yung expenses naman yung i-close mo. So, pag kinlose natin yung expenses, di ba, normal balance sa expenses ay debit. So, para ma-close natin siya, para ma-zero siya, so credit naman siya. So, i-close mo siya kay income summary din. So, kaya entry debit, income summary, and credit expenses. Okay? So, dito nyo malalaman kung may profit or loss. Siyempre, if your revenue greater than dun sa expenses, so ibig sabihin meron kang profit. So kapag ang revenue ay less than sa expenses, so ibig sabihin meron kang loss. Okay? So pag let's say ang revenue mo ay 100, so debit revenue 100, income summary 100, then ang expenses natin let's say 70,000, so 70,000. So ang revenue mo is 100, ang expenses ay 70, so it means meron kang profit. So, di ba ito, nilalagay natin kay isang income summary, kinuklose siya, but si income summary, i-close din kay capital. Okay? So, pag kinlose si income summary, pag tinignan nyo yan, nilagay natin yan sa T account. So, income summary mo, so meron kang credit 100, tapos yung income summary mo dito sa expenses ay 70. So, ibig sabihin, meron kang balance of 30 na credit. So, kapag credit yung income summary mo, ibig sabihin, meron kang profit. Okay? So, meron kang profit kasi mas malaki yung revenue mo kaysa sa expenses. So, kapag meron kang profit, i-close mo, ito yung income summary, i-close kay capital. Okay? So, pag kinlose natin yan kay capital, since profit yan, anong effect niya sa capital? So, magi-increase yung capital. So, kaya i-credit mo naman yung capital. So, since si income summary balance niya ay credit, para ma-close siya, para ma-zero siya, kailangan mo siyang i-debit. So, kaya pagdating dito, debit income summary. Okay? So, debit income summary and credit, ito kay capital. Let's say si A capital na lang. So, credit A capital. So, ito yun. Ito, kapag meron kang profit. Kasi pag loss yan, baliktad. Debit A capital and credit income summary. So, ito yung profit or loss. So, depende kung naka-debit or naka-credit. So, ibig sabihin, ano lang ibig ko sabihin dyan? Pagdating sa sole proprietorship and partnership, pumapasok yung profit or loss saan? Sa capital. Okay? Kapag sole proprietorship or partnership, pumapasok sa capital yung profit or loss. Itong retained earnings, ito, yung profit kapag corporation, pumapasok sa retained earnings, hindi kay capital. Okay? So ito, pag corporation, instead na A capital ito, pag corporation, ang i-record mo dito, i-credit mo ay retained earnings. Okay? So, yun yung retained earnings natin. So, ito, kapag corporation. So, pag loss, anong entry dyan? Debit retained earnings and credit income summary. Pag loss. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kung dati, sa sole proprietorship and partnership, pag meron kang profit or loss sa capital, pumapasok. Pero pag corporation, saan siya pumapasok? Kay retained earnings. Okay? So, yun. So ang, kumbaga, yung laman ng retained earnings natin is yung profit or loss. Okay? So, kaya, another account to. Kasama to sa shareholders equity. So, ang normal balance niya ay credit, but pwede rin siya maging debit kapag deficit. Okay? So, yun yung retained earnings. So, yung main source ng retained earnings natin ay profit. Okay? So, sa retained earnings, may dalawang klase ng retained earnings. Merong appropriated and unappropriated. So, ano yung pinagkaiba ng unappropriated retained earnings sa appropriated retained earnings? So, pag sinabi kasi nating unappropriated retained earnings, ito yung free na pwede nating i-declare as dividends. So, dyan natin kinukuha. Okay, let's say, ang total retained earnings natin ay, let's say, 100,000. Ito, total nito. Ang unappropriated daw dyan ay 80,000. And yung appropriated is 20,000. So, ibig sabihin, total retained earnings natin is 100,000. Kaya lang, 80,000 dyan yung unappropriated and yung 20,000 yung appropriated. So, ibig sabihin, yung 80,000 na unappropriated retained earnings, yan yung pwede nating i-declare as dividends hanggang 80,000 lang. Okay? So, sa dividends, yun yung nare-receive ng shareholders, no? Parang share nila dun sa profit ng corporation, but hindi automatic na meron kang retained earnings or unappropriated retained earnings, makaka-receive agad sila ng dividend. So, depende yun kung kailan na magde-declare ng dividends yung board of directors. So, kung 80,000 yung unappropriated, so ibig sabihin, yun yung pwede natin i-declare as dividends. Yung 20,000, hindi siya pwedeng galawin, restricted siya, appropriated retained earnings. So, ibig sabihin, may specific na paggagamitan ka ng 20,000 na yan. So, pwedeng for future expenses or kaya mga contingencies and other purposes. So, yun yung unappropriated and appropriated retained earnings. Sa dividends nga pala, ma-discuss din naman sa corporation nyo. So, meron kasing pwedeng cash dividend or stocks dividend. Okay? So, basta sa ngayon, sa retained earnings, kasi na-touch natin retained earnings dun sa presentation ng OCI. So, may dalawang klase, unappropriated retained earnings and appropriated retained earnings. So, ibig sabihin, yung retained earnings natin, dyan yung accumulated profits and losses. Okay, so, or accumulated profits and losses. So, ano siya, permanent account siya. So, di ba may dalawang klase na account, permanent and temporary. Pag temporary, ibig sabihin yung nasisiro at the end of the period, di ba? So, kapag permanent, so, kini-carry forward natin yung balance niya the following year. So, kaya kunyaya, retained earnings natin ending this year ay 100,000. So, the following year, ang retained earnings beginning mo ay 100,000. So, pagdating sa corporation, ang makikita nyo na laman lang ng retained earnings. So, yung formula ng retained earnings, ganito lang class. So, meron kang retained earnings beginning, okay, plus net income, or ito yung profit, minus kapag loss, okay, so net income, minus dividends declared, okay, minus to, so equals, ito na yung retained earnings ending natin. Okay, yun yung formula ng retained earnings natin sa corporation ninyo. So, retained earnings beginning plus net income minus dividend declared. So, equals retained earnings ending. So, the following year, let's say, kunyari ang beginning mo, let's say first year, wala. Tapos, net income mo ay 30. Tapos, let's say, nag-declare ka ng dividends, 10. So, ang retained earnings natin ending ay 20. So, the following year, yung ending mo siyang magiging, yung ending mo siyang magiging beginning. Teka, nagkapareho ng 20. 5 na lang to para makala nyo yun. So, 5 na lang to. So, ang retained earnings mo ending ay 25. So, the following year, 25 yung beginning. So, magkakaroon ka ulit ng net income, let's say, 50. Tapos, dividend declared natin ay, let's say, 15. Okay? So, 25 plus 50, 75, minus 15, so 60. So, ito yung retained earnings ending natin. Ito yung ending. So, ito yung hahatiin mo. Pwedeng sa dalawa, yun yung unappropriated and appropriated retained earnings. So, kapag yung dividend declared dyan, so ibig sabihin, hindi siya dapat mag-exceed dun sa unappropriated retained earnings. So, yung kasi yung unappropriated, yun lang yung pwede natin i-declare as dividends. Okay? So, but ito, yung computation ng retained earnings natin, madadagdagan yan sa ngayon. So, magkakaroon ng prior period errors and effect of change in accounting policy. Okay, so mamaya madidiscuss din natin yung statement of retained earnings. Okay, so dun sa bandang dulo. So dun sa presentation ng comprehensive income, an entity has two options presenting comprehensive income, namely two statements and single statement comprehensive income. Kapag two statements, ibig sabihin, hiniwalay pa yung statement of comprehensive income sa income statement. Diba, yung income statement ay na-discuss nyo na yan sa basic accounting. So, diba, kung sole proprietor yan, revenues minus expenses, so equals net income. Yun na yung income statement natin, diba? So, dito, ginawa niya, meron ng net income doon, tapos nagawa ulit siya ng isa pa, statement of comprehensive income. Okay? So, kaya two statements. Kapag kasi single statement of comprehensive income, diretso lang. So, yung net income, after net income, kasunod niya na yung other comprehensive income. So, may binigay din na example dyan sa libro natin, yung two statements and single statement. Pag tinignan ninyo, yun ay nasa page 194. Ito yung kapag ang two statements yung gagawin, meron ka na income statement tapos may statement of comprehensive income ka pa. Yung page 195, ito yung single statement lang. So, from net sales hanggang na dun sa comprehensive income. So, combine na yung net income and other comprehensive income. Okay? Sources of income, ito na, ano nyo naman na yan, ano yung sources ng income, sales of merchandise to customers, rendering services, use of entity resources, disposal of resources other than products. So, components of expenses, cost of goods sold or cost of sales. Tandaan, ang cost of goods sold or cost of sales ay expense. Okay? Distribution costs or selling expenses, administrative expenses, and other expenses, and income tax expense. Okay? So, nagbigay na example ng cost of goods sold under ng merchandising and manufacturing. So, classification of expenses, pag sinabi distribution costs, constitute costs which are directly related to selling, advertising, and delivery of goods to customers. So, no basic accounting ninyo, pag sinabi natin distribution costs or selling expenses, so basta, ano yan, may connection sa makabenta ka, di ba? Yung nagkaroon ka ng expenses para mag-increase yung sales mo, makabenta ka. So, ano yung mga examples nun? Di ba? Advertising expense, siya ay selling expense kasi bakit ka ba nagpapa-advertise? Di ba? Para mag-increase yung sales mo. So, siya ay kasama sa selling expenses. Dito mas madaling maintindihan or mag-classify ng expenses. Pag meron lagyan nating tatlong building, factory building, admin building, and store. Okay? Sa factory building, dito ginagawa yung products natin. Okay? Sa admin building and store. So, dito, kapag yung expenses dito sa factory natin, ito yung tinatawag na manufacturing cost. Okay? So, sa higher accounting, madidiscuss din kung ano yung manufacturing cost. Since manufacturing cost, ito yung direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. Pahapiyaw lang na yung plus. So, admin expenses, lahat ng may incur na dito sa building na to, ito yung recorded as admin expense. Okay. Sa store, lahat ng may incur na cost dito sa store natin, ito yung recorded as selling expense. Okay, so gano'n lang siya. Let's say, ito, kunyari, salary ng sales agent natin. So, ika-classify mo siya kung manufacturing cost, admin expense, or selling expense. So, tingnan mo kung nasaan yon. Okay, Sa building mo yun ng factory, sa admin ba, or sa store? Saan yung sales agent natin? Nasa store. So, ibig sabihin, yung salary niya recorded as selling expense. Okay? Let's say, salary ng accountant. So, manufacturing ba yon, admin expense, or selling expense? So, tingnan mo kung nasaan ba si accountant dyan. So, nasa factory ba si accountant? Nasa admin ba siya or nasa store siya? So, siyempre, si accountant nasa admin. So, kaya, yung salary ng accountant ay admin expense. So, ng basic accounting ninyo kasi, di ba, parang pag sinabi mo salary expense siya. So, but this time, ika-classify mo na siya kung anong expenses yon. Okay? So, kung yung manufacturing cost, kapag nandun sa factory, ano naman yung example ng factory cost natin or manufacturing cost. So, let's say yung salary naman ng factory workers, nasaan ba yung factory workers? Nasa factory. Okay? So, kaya, ika-classify mo yun as manufacturing cost. Okay? So, parang hindi kayo malito, yan, isipin mo, nasaan ba sila? Okay? Let's say, kunyari, pag sinabi natin, depreciation expense ng building. Okay? Depreciation expense ng building. So, no basic ninyo, basta alam mo, depreciation expense ng building is 100,000 expense siya. But this time, pag kinlasify mo, kaninong building or anong building yung ide-depreciate natin. So, sa factory building ba? So, kung factory building yun, ang classification yun ay manufacturing cost. Pero kung admin building yung ide-depreciate natin, so ika-classify mo siya as admin expense. So, kung yung store, yung building ng store natin, yung ide-depreciate natin, so, ka-classify siya o i-record siya as selling expense. Okay, so ganun siya class para hindi kayo din malito. So, pag selling expense, kung ano yung cost, ay ano yung mga expenses na ma-incur natin para mag-increase yung sales natin, di ba? So, like advertising expense, sabi dyan, salesmen's salaries, salesmen's commissions. Ano yung commissions na yan? Let's say, sabi mo, doon sa mga sales agent mo, sige, kapag nakabenta kayo ng 100,000, meron kayong commission na 10%. So, sa 100,000, let's say, nakabenta ka, 100,000, sa 10% ng 100,000 is 10,000. So, yung agent makaka-receive ng 10,000. So, ang tawag doon ay commission expense. So, recorded din siya as selling expense. Kasi nagbibigay ka ng commission para ma-encourage mo yung agent mo na magbenta. Okay, so makabenta. Traveling and marketing expenses, advertising and publicity, freight out. O, na-discuss natin yung freight out, yung transportation out, sinasabi natin delivery expense. Depreciation of delivery equipment and store equipment. Delivery equipment nasa store, diba? So, store equipment nasa store, kaya recorded siya as selling expenses. Administrative expenses constitute costs of administering the business. Okay? So, administrative expenses ordinarily include all operating expenses not related to selling and cost of goods sold. So, ibig sabihin, kung hindi siya cost of goods sold and selling expense, siya ay admin expense. So, tandaan mo lang din, lahat ng cost na ma-incur natin doon sa admin billing natin recorded as admin expense. So, ano yung mga examples? Ito, maraming nalilito. Ay, maraming nagkakaroon. Sa admin expense, kasama dito yung doubtful account expense. Okay? So, doubtful accounts expense. So, doubtful accounts expense, ano ba yung doubtful account expense? Pag sinabi natin doubtful account expense, ito yung receivables natin na feeling natin hindi na natin siya makokolekta. Okay? So, marami nagkakamali dyan. Ay, ma'am, yung doubtful account expense, let's say, meron ka receivables na 50,000, tapos sabi mo, sa 50,000 na yun, 10% yung doubtful. So, di ba nagre-record ka debit doubtful account expense and credit allowance for doubtful accounts. Di ba expenses yung credit ay allowance. Yung allowance for doubtful accounts ay recorded naman as deduction sa receivables. Okay? So, 10% nung 50,000, yun daw yung doubtful accounts. So, yung doubtful accounts expense na yun, pag kinasify natin siya, admin siya. Okay? Hindi siya selling. Kasi masasabihin ng iba, ma'am, hindi po ba selling yung doubtful account expense? Kasi, ano yun sa binenta natin yun diba? Nagbenta ka, hindi mo na siya makukolekta. Okay, so hindi siya selling expense, but admin expense siya. Okay? So, pag walang sinabi, silent yung problem, nilagay lang doubtful account expense. So, kasama siya sa admin expense. Okay? Except, magiging distribution cost siya or selling expense siya. Sabi, if the granting of credit and collection of accounts are under the charge of the sales manager. Okay? So, yung granting and yung collection ng accounts ay sino dapat ang mag-monitor or mag-grant or mag-kolekta. Kapag under ng sales manager, selling expense siya. Okay? Kasi ibig sabihin, kung si sales manager yung dapat na mag-collect niyan at hindi natin makokolekta, so ibig sabihin, 'di ba si sales manager ay nasa store, so ibig sabihin yung doubtful account expense na yun, responsibility ni sales manager, so i-record natin siya as selling expense. But if the granting of credit and collection of accounts are under the charge of an officer other than sales manager, so doubtful accounts shall be considered as administrative expense. So kung hindi naman under ni sales manager yung pag-grant and yung pag-collect ng receivable natin, ay i-record natin siya or i-classify natin siya as admin expense. Okay? So usually class, kasi lalo kapag malalaki yung company, may yung mga accountants niya, kanya-kanyang accounts yung hawak. So let's say kunyari ako, ang hawak ko ay receivable. Tapos yung isa ay isang accountant, ang hawak niya ay payable. So ibig sabihin ako yung mag-monitor ng mga receivables natin. So naka-monitor yan kung kailan yung due, okay, yung mga terms. So, ibig sabihin nun, sa akin naka-charge, ako yung in charge. So, si accountant, saan siya? Nasa admin siya. So, ibig sabihin, kung hindi yan makukolekta, i-record siya as doubtful account expense. Okay, so admin expense siya. Okay, so i-record siya as admin expense. So, but if walang nakalagay, silent yung problem, so ang doubtful account expense ay admin expense. Okay, so wag nyo siyang kalimutan. So ano pa yung mga examples ng admin expenses? Office salaries, expenses of general executives, expenses of general accounting and credit department, office supplies use. Okay, so office supplies use, kasi office sa admin yun. Okay, so certain taxes, contribution, professional fees, depreciation of office building and office equipment, amortization of intangible assets. So other expenses are those expenses which are not directly related to the selling and administrative function naman. So examples are loss on sale of trading investment, loss on disposal of property, plant and equipment, loss on sale of non-current investment, casualty loss. So yun yung mga other expenses. So tandaan nyo din, no more extraordinary items. So PAS paragraph 87 specifically mandates that an entity shall not present any items of income and expenses as extraordinary, either on the face of the income statement or statement of comprehensive income or in the note. So wala nang extraordinary items. Okay. So line items, PAS 1 paragraph 82 provides that as a minimum, the income statement and statement of comprehensive income shall include the following line items. So revenue, gain and loss from the recognition of financial asset, finance costs, share in income or loss of associate and joint venture accounted for using the equity method, gain or loss of on the reclassification of financial asset from amortized cost to fair value profit or loss, gain or loss on the reclassification of financial asset from fair value other comprehensive income to fair value profit or loss, income tax expense, a single amount comprising discontinued operations, profit or loss for the period, total other comprehensive income, and comprehensive income for the period being total of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. So the following items shall be disclosed on the face of the income statement and statement of comprehensive income. So una, yung profit or loss for the period attributable to non-controlling interest and owners of the parent. So ito, higher accounting na to. Total comprehensive income for the period attributable to non-controlling interest and owners of the parent. Okay? So, forms of income statement. So, PAS paragraph 99 provides that an entity shall present an analysis of expense recognized in profit or loss using a classification based on either function of expenses or their nature within the entity. So, yung expenses, pwede natin i-classify sa as functional and natural expenses. So, yung functional presentation and natural presentation. So, yung usual na pag gumawa tayo ng income statement, di ba, cost of goods sold, selling expenses, and admin expenses, yun yung functional. Okay, parang yung traditional natin na presentation. So, this form classifies expenses according to their function. As part of cost of goods sold, distribution cost, administrative expenses, and other expenses. So, the functional presentation is also known as the cost of goods sold method. So, an entity classifying expenses by function shall disclose additional information on the nature of expenses, including depreciation, amortization, and employee benefit cost. So, doon mo naman makikita sa notes to financial statements yon. Okay? Pag natural presentation naman, the natural presentation is referred to as nature of expense method. Nature naman. Under this method, expenses are aggregated according to their nature and not allocated among various functions within the entity. So in other words, the expenses are no longer classified as cost of goods sold, distribution costs, administrative expenses, and other expenses. So the expenses which are the same nature are grouped or aggregated and presented as one item. So for example, depreciation, tapos purchases of raw materials, transportation costs, employee benefits costs, and advertising costs are presented separately. So mas mahaba pag natural presentation kasi parang pagsasamahin mo lang yung i-group mo sila. Okay? So but kasi pag functional, kumbaga hatiin mo lang sa tatlong expenses yun. Cost of goods sold, selling, and admin expenses. Okay? So other expenses and finance costs, ganun lang siya. So pag tinignan mo, nasa page 189 yung example ng functional income statement, tapos nasa page 191 yung natural income statement. So ito, pinagsama-sama lahat ng income, diba? Net sales, other income, page 191 do sa natural. Then total income, tapos expenses, increase in inventory. So ibig sabihin yung cost of goods sold natin, diba? Yung cost of goods sold natin, ano ba yung cost of goods sold natin? Yun yung merchandise inventory beginning plus net purchases minus merchandise inventory ending. So yung ano doon, hiniwa-hiwalay pa. Okay, ginroup pa. Okay, so ito yung increase in inventory, tapos net purchases. Okay, so employee benefit cost, sales commission. Which form of income statement? PS1 does not prescribe any format. Okay, so statement of comprehensive income. So statement of comprehensive income. So in addition to the income statement, a statement of comprehensive income is also prepared in order to show the total comprehensive income. So, di ba may single tsaka yung two statements. Okay. So, the statement of comprehensive income starts with the profit or loss as shown in the income statement plus or minus the components of other comprehensive. So the purpose of this statement is to provide a more comprehensive information on financial performance measured more broadly than the income as traditionally computed. So binigay yung example dyan sa page 194. So comprehensive income for a period includes the net income or loss for the period plus or minus the components of other comprehensive income. Okay? So kaya yan yung example dyan, diba? Net income tapos other comprehensive income to be reclassified to profit or loss. So yung foreign currency 150, so unrealized ay loss on derivative ay 100, so net niya ay 50,000. So dinagdag plus, so dun sa net income na 1,550,000, so ang comprehensive income natin is 1,600,000. So pag tinanong sa inyo magkano yung net income, ang sagot 1,550,000. Pag tinanong ay comprehensive income, ang sagot ay 1,600,000. So sabi dyan, the net other comprehensive income 50,000 is carried to reserves or shown separately in the statement of changes in equity. Okay, so makikita yan naman sa statement of changes in equity, yung net ng OCI natin. So, single statement of comprehensive income. So, another option is presenting the components of profit or loss and components of other comprehensive income. So, magkasunod lang siya, 'di ba? Net income. So, pag nakuha mo na yung income before tax, less natin income tax. So, yun yung net income. So, plus or minus na nung net OCI natin. So, yun din yung comprehensive income. So, the statement of retained earnings naman shows the changes affecting directly the retained earnings of an entity and relates the income statement to the statement of financial position. So, the important data affecting the retained earnings that should be clearly disclosed in the statements of retained earnings are profit or loss for the period, prior period errors, so yun yung nadagdag, diba? Dividends declared and paid to shareholders paid to shareholders, and effect of change in accounting policy, then appropriation of retained earnings. So, ibig sabihin kasi pag sa retained earnings, so statement of retained earnings naman, yung retained earnings natin ngayon, dati, di ba meron kang beginning, plus yung net income natin, o ito yung profit, or loss kapag negative, tapos less, di ba, dividend declared. So, ito madadagdagan, plus or minus, yung mga prior period errors, okay, and yung plus or minus din, yung effect of change in accounting policy. Itong effect of change in accounting policy, parang katulad, kunyari, ang ginagamit mo sa inventory ay, let's say, FIFO method, tapos nag-change ka ng method, naging average method. So, yung effect nun, pwedeng plus or minus. So, yun yung tinatawag na effect of change in accounting policy. So, madiscuss yan sa corporation. Okay, so, binigay din yung example ng statement of retained earnings sa page 196. Okay, so retained earnings, beginning, tapos correction of error, yan yung prior period error, change in accounting policy, diba? So, yun yung corrected beginning balance, net income for the period, tapos dividends declared, tapos appropriated for contingency ang retained earnings natin December 31 to 150. So, yan yung retained earnings natin for unappropriated. Okay. So, next, statement of changes in equity. So, statement of changes in equity is a basic statement that shows the movements in the elements of or components of the shareholders' equity. So, the statement of retained earnings is no longer a required basic statement, but it is a part of the statement of changes in equity. Diba yung complete set ng financial statements, wala naman doon na statement of retained earnings, but meron doon statement of changes in equity or statement of changes in equity. So, an entity shall present a statement of changes in equity showing the following: comprehensive income for the period, for each component of equity, the effects of changes in accounting policies and corrections of errors, for each component equity, reconciliation between the carrying amount at the beginning and end of the period, separately disclosing changes from profit or loss, each item of other comprehensive income, and transactions with owners in their capacity as owners, showing separately contributions by and distributions to owners. So, nagbibigay din ng example dyan sa page 197. So, sabi dyan, the preparation and a more detailed discussion of the statement of financial position, income statement, and statement of comprehensive income, and statement of changes in equity are taken up exhaustively in Intermediate Accounting Volume 3. So, madidiscuss pa yun sa Intermediate Accounting ninyo, Volume 3. Okay, so kung hindi ako nagkakamali, ay pang third year or second year, second sem. Okay, nyo pa siya makukuha. So, yun lang yung sa Statement of Comprehensive Income.